This is KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine, and standing by to join me is Kelechi Ubozoh. Ubozoh, did I get that right?
Ubozoh.
Ubozoh, okay. She is a Nigerian-American mental health consultant, advocate, writer, and published author, and I'm so happy to have her on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
As I mentioned, I found you on LinkedIn, and I heard about your book and what you're doing in the mental health space. So I want to start from, why was it so important for you to be involved in this mental health arena?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was basically since I was pretty young, I was someone who had really, really big emotions and had a lot of feelings. And I didn't have safe spaces to really talk about the feelings. It was really like, oh, you're too much, or like, really stop talking about that.
Really?
But,
Did people in your family like shot you down from talking, or?
well, I think it's just that, I was just a different kind of kid. Like, I loved vampires. I wore all black. I was like a goth kid.
Different.
I was like Wednesday Addams, but in a black body. So it was,
adorable.
and there was something about all of those things that spoke to me. And I think for some discomfort, my mom did buy me for my 6th birthday a black birthday dress. So, she was on board. I wouldn't say that she wasn't on board. But I think when I moved to Georgia, so I moved from New York to Georgia, there was a lot of different ways that I was received. And I navigated a lot of racism, a lot of colorism. Our neighborhoods were segregated. So I was in a all black neighborhood, but because my mom wanted me to have a good education, unfortunately, how redlining works, the education was in the all white neighborhood. So I would get kind of like bussed over to a different school. And I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And for me, my grandmother actually came down and helped to raise me. And she just was this magical person. Like she didn't care if I wore fishnets and combat boots. She'd like babysit my like Tamagotchi. She was,
love it.
We'd be watching like MacGyver or Matlock together. And she just accepted me. She accepted me, and there was nothing wrong with me. And she was the only person I felt that really accepted me. When she got sick and eventually passed away from cancer, I felt like my world ended and I didn't want to live anymore. And where I lived, there were no conversations about, thoughts of suicide or thoughts of like, just kind of like wanting to sleep forever and never wake up. And the reaction of people around me was so negative that, I did end up going into a psych hospital, which was traumatic, but beyond the traumatizing experience of the hospital and the way that people reacted around me, I was like, I should bury this and never talk about it again, because people cannot handle this. And, years later, it's amazing how long you can bury something. Like the thoughts didn't go away. I just buried them. And I had a really unfortunate, the funny thing is I put on a mask. I just pretended to be happy all the time. And I was high achieving. I did really good in school. I left Georgia and went to New York and became a journalist and a student journalist. I got published in the New York Times as a student.
I saw that.
Which I still am like, did that really happen? It did. I sometimes just look it up to make sure that like it really happened. I'm like, no, it happened.
Did I dream that?
Did I dream that? And on the surface, everything looked good. Like I had a boyfriend and I had like these dreams and hopes that were being fulfilled. But meanwhile, I was always thinking in the back of my head, you're not good enough. You're a horrible person. You're not worthy. The world would be better off without you. So it's almost like I sustained living on other people's love, which is not
healthy.
It's not healthy. Talk about codependency and other things, but 2, it's not sustainable if you really don't, not only if you don't like yourself, if you actually really don't, like if you hate yourself. And I had a lot of hatred towards myself that I tried to bury. So
excuse me, why do you think you hated yourself so much?
I don't know if it was some of the internalized racism that I experienced, the messages that I was getting when, I mean, frankly, it happened in the South and the North. So I can't even really just try to ascribe it to an area. It just was packaged differently.
Mhm.
But I think there was a piece of me that just never felt like I fit in, and that I was just different, and I wasn't accepted. And I just was like, well, what's wrong with me? My parents got divorced. I felt like I was fine with that, but I think there's pieces of me that
we're not fine.
that were not fine with that.
Yeah.
Like on paper, I was fine with that, but not having, a really strong relationship with my father. I mean, moving to a place where people don't understand me. I mean, if you do any of the adverse childhood effect stuff, you could check off a whole bunch of boxes, but I really think the experience of just not being seen, not being heard, not being believed when I was in pain, and then having the one person who like
unconditionally loved
me die, that wound. Well, there was no one who was like, let's cope with how you lose a loved one. There was no like, here's how you can like think about racism. It's not you, it's this other. There were none of those conversations. It was like, I was in the 90s. It was like, we're colorblind. We don't see color. That was was the thing. So I can't pinpoint it to one thing. It was just almost like a tornado of all of it.
Sounds like it. Yeah. And I think, and then you're walking around when you're little, like, I'm fine. I'm okay. I can handle this. I get it.
Yeah.
As you grow up, you're like, I'm not really fine. I'm crumbling inside, but I'm going to act like I am. But I have imposter syndrome. I have all these things that I haven't dealt with,
Yeah. And I had the perfect job. My job was to ask people questions all day and never have anyone ask me anything. So it was a great way to hide because people thought we were deeply connecting. And I mean, when you're talking to someone and you're interviewing them, they feel open and like they've connected, but they actually don't know anything about you because you are not the subject of the conversation. So it was like hiding in plain sight, if that makes sense.
It's so interesting. I always say how I feel like we really need to ask each other, how are you? Instead of answering, I'm fine, thanks, like really tell somebody. I mean, you might think you'd scare them off, but the truth is we don't stop to say, really, how are you?
Yeah. I have friends who say, how are you? And then they put ... really. And the really lets me know, like that's permission to be like, actually, I'm not great right now. This is really tough. And just having that burden be released is so helpful. They don't need to fix anything.
No.
They like listening.
Just listening.
The power of listening is amazing. And I mean, I think your question was like, how did I get into this? Is because I'm a suicide attempt survivor. So after having this very like perfect looking life, but pretending to be happy, experienced sexual assault. And that just broke the mask. It was like, I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And now looking back, I mean, not only was the treatment I received really not helpful, but also it was like, there were so many opportunities before I did that I was actually trying to get help. I actually tried to talk to people, but they didn't believe me. They thought, well,
you believe you?
Oh, I am pretty much never believed when I'm in a crisis because I present well. Which, I mean, I think about it like as a Black woman, I always wonder like how does race and how does racism show up? Yeah. So I don't cry. I don't appear vulnerable. The way that I'm speaking to you right now is how I sound when I'm in a crisis. My voice doesn't change. I'm not getting shaky, and it's just not how I present. And so when I tell someone I need help, if I am asking for help, that means like I have really exhausted every resource. But it was like, oh, but you're able to articulate that you need help. You're fine.
You're fine. Yeah.
I was like, I'm not fine. I'm not fine. But I would get turned away a lot. And so that's actually what happened. I got turned away, I got assaulted, and then I attempted. And I say that not to shock people, but it's to say that like when someone asks for help or when someone's in pain, believe them. Yes. Just believe them. But why would someone reach out if they didn't need something? I think sometimes people say, oh, you're trying to get attention. But I'm like, they may need attention, right?
Well, so they are trying to get attention.
They are. Give them some attention.
Give them attention. Right. Yeah. And listen. Yeah. What I feel that the work you're doing, and you are very tuned into your own mental health, but the mental health of others, because we're in a mental health pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
And your book, which came out in 2019, it seems like it's so relevant to the times.
Absolutely. Yeah, We've Been Too Patient, which I co-edited with LD Green, is really stories from people who have been patients in a psychiatric system and have survived that, and have lived to share like what didn't work and what did work. And it's really the like conversations by like Black, Indigenous, people of color, marginalized folks. I mean, there's almost every identity in our book, and we don't all agree with each other, which is great, but we do agree that we should be part of our mental health treatment. Like, things shouldn't happen to us, they should happen with us.
Yes.
And I mean, the atrocities that people have experienced, and we're not talking about decades ago, we're talking like years ago, like
Sure.
this has happened. And I think we really want to say that like mental health is health. I think people think that it's this like, oh, those people have those issues, but everyone has mental health.
It's everybody.
It's everybody. I mean, there's not a lot of great things about COVID at all, but one thing that I did notice was people were like, oh, wow, mental health is real. I mean, I think everyone kind of was like, we should talk about this. I've been talking about it for like 9 years, and now I'm getting phone calls like, yeah, okay, so it does impact everyone. And it's because we've been with each other, we've been with ourselves, we've been isolated, we've been disconnected. And the safest thing for people when they're having harm or going through a tough time is connectivity. And
you bet.
This pandemic's like cut through connectivity, right? I mean, we do our best with Zoom and trying to stay connected with people, but I think there's a level of isolation and distress and anxiety, and I don't know what's going to happen next. And then you add in, what people have called the racial reckoning, though none of it was new, but other people paid attention. That trauma and seeing those videos and seeing the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and just seeing that and over and over again. I mean, while you are in your house and maybe you feel helpless, like you can't do anything. I mean, I think this has just been, I still sometimes think I'm in 2020 and I'm like, I can't believe it's about to be 2022. I'm still processing 2020.
I know. I feel that people really should pay so much attention right now to mental health, to the fact that we have pushed people aside to save them from COVID, let's say older adults. So we have really isolated older adults, but in that we have made them more lonely and more depressed, and that causes health issues. And then you also have a younger generation that's lonely and depressed and isolated, and they're not having those milestone moments. They've missed out on these opportunities they worked so hard, they were looking forward to. Sorry, you're not going to have that job. We're not in person.
Oh, I've talked to a couple of high schools, and I mean, what they told me, they're like, I was so looking forward to prom or our senior trips or graduation.
Yes.
These really big milestones where they get to be with their friends. And, when you're young, like, adults are not your community. That's not your peer group,
Exactly.
And now you're at home with your parents. And so, what does that mean? And how do we provide those spaces for young folks to connect with each other? And I mean, there have been different changes depending on where you live, with folks reconnecting or reemerging. But I think the kind of like, oh, is it safe? Can we come back out? Oh, wait, no, we got to go back in. This kind of back and forth. Yeah,
shaming for wearing masks.
Oh, it's complicated out there.
Very. We won't even get in there.
That's a second podcast.
I feel that, and I talked about this, I'm starting this initiative called the CARE Initiative.
Yeah.
We really have to think about being thoughtful, not only to ourselves, being really kind and patient with ourselves. Like, you don't have to have these days where you're go, 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 and, create, do, and if you're a creative, people are looking at you like, why haven't you finished that book yet? Or that screenplay, or that, you know what? Because I had a day where I just needed to sit in my thoughts.
Yeah, the importance of rest and
Yeah.
slowing down. I mean, if we have not learned that slowing down and rest is important, then
Hmm.
I'm worried for all of us because and folks have had to grind harder because they have their kids at home and
Right.
now they have to manage all of these different things.
Yes.
But I mean, I think this has been really an opportunity for a lot of people to say I mean, a lot of people have quit their jobs. They're like, actually, I realized that I don't want to do this, or
Right.
I'm realizing I have different boundaries and this is
Mhm.
sucking my energy and I need to
Yes.
rest and slow down.
Yeah. Right. I changed
There's
my priorities during the pandemic, kind of
a
thing.
lot of people did. A lot of
Yeah.
people changed their priorities. And I think people think mental health is kind of like you sit and talk to a therapist, which is definitely can be a component and one
Yeah.
of my tools. But also mental health is how are you resting? How are
Mhm.
you taking care of your body? What are your boundaries? Who are you going to allow back into your world? And who maybe should maybe
Yes.
not be part of your world? And
Right.
that is part of mental health.
Yes. And the people that are caregivers, whether you're caring for an older person,
Yeah.
your kids, whoever, family members, I feel that they have so much weight on their shoulders. They are pulled in so many directions that they need those outlets. They need to figure out ways to recharge and to say, no, I can't do that. Can you do that? Because I'm taking on too much.
Yeah, the importance of no and even having your own community,
Mhm.
right? Like I have a group of Black women who are writers and we talk
That's
and
great.
we check in with each other. And then I have different groups of friends that, or maybe it's around a subject that we are like having an outlet, but someone needs help. Okay, we're gonna send a meal to their house, right?
Right.
Or if you're just exhausted, but you can support each other and you can ask for help. And I think a lot of caregivers are not used to asking for help because they're
Right.
like, I am superwoman or I'm superman or I am super non-binary person. And I'm going to take it all on. And I've
It
just seen
doesn't
that.
work.
It does. Well, I'll tell you, I've burnt out on that
Yeah.
real quick. So help, but it's not selfish to take care of yourself.
I agree. Because
Yeah,
it definitely makes you better and stronger to help your people, right?
totally. If there's
You have
no
to
you,
recharge.
there's no help.
You got
Yeah.
it. You got
Yeah.
it. What else would you like people to know about you? I know you do a lot of public speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that I mean, I know we've already kind of touched on some things like that I'm a suicide attempt survivor and I do a lot of public speaking around suicide prevention. And I mean, I think my goal is to normalize the conversation that some people think about not being here. And the more that we can regulate ourselves to hold space for them to talk about it, the better the better results we'll have. And I
Right.
think we've just been taught so about I don't know if everyone's family's gone through this, but there's just some stuff you're not ever supposed to share. And I really think if we shift the paradigm, because I don't know, my ancestors were doing the best they could with what they had, but I think they wanted a more open life for me in the end. So I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the areas that I work in, and I am part of a documentary called The S Word with other
I
folks.
saw that.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
so yeah, I mean, I love talking about the film and being part of the film. And I was really struggling during the film, which people, again, because
They
of how
didn't
I
know.
present, they didn't know.
I'm
Um,
fine.
I'm fine. I should say in the film I'm not fine, but my not fine still seems fine. But
Do you
I'm
want to share a little tidbit about the film? Because
yeah.
I saw a little clip. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the S word is now it's actually free. So you can go to theswordmovie.com and check
Okay.
it out. So and it is a film about suicide attempt survivor Desiree Lestage. And she's going around to hear from other attempt survivors their stories. She takes photos for this website that she created called Live Through This. And you really hear from mental health advocates, you hear from attempt survivors, you hear from people who've lost loved ones. But I mean, it's part like what our stories are, but how we live now. And there is humor in it, and there's a lot of like silly moments, and there's a lot of love, and just kind of the complex identities we may have in our different paths. But really, it's to break the shame and stigma around suicide, around the conversation around suicide, so we can have people talk about it more, so we can access help and have those
Mhm.
community conversations. So um, Really
It's
happy
so
about it.
important.
Yeah.
Especially with, I lost my dad to cancer, and I felt like maybe I should have gone to a survivors, group. But and when I lost my friend 10 years ago, I realize I really should have gone to a suicide support group, because I was trying to reach out to family members and different people, and I was probably driving them nuts because I wanted to really discover her mindset and what was going on. And I'll never know all the answers. But I remember one person, and I won't name this person, saying to me, "You need to move on. This is what you wanted." And I'm sorry. That
Wow.
that was see, that was
Ooh,
shocking. Yeah.
that. Oh,
And
I feel
I
that in
I
my
just got
body.
off the phone at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so, I lost my breath in that moment when I heard that. And knowing that we were best friends growing up, that was not something to say to me, because I
Yeah.
knew that's not what you wanted, right? So
Yeah.
it's really important to talk about and go to support groups. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's true. I mean, we need to be around other people who've had similar experiences because they
Mhm.
have more because they can talk about it without
Yeah.
shutting us down or and I'm so sorry that person
I
said that
was
to you.
so shut down. It was
That
awful.
just stops the conversation and that's not
Yeah,
what we should be doing. And
right.
at least for me, I just wanted to end the pain. I was in so much pain and I didn't know another way to be. And
Yeah,
some people have we don't know how long they fought to stay here
that's true.
and other people are like, you know what, I immediately regret that. And everyone has different kind of experiences, but for me now when the thoughts, because I think people want to hear like a happy story, like and then she lived happily ever after and never had a thought again about that. But I do, but now for me when I have them I'm like, okay, something in my life needs to change, not that I don't need to be here, but
Okay,
oh, I need to leave my job or maybe I need to rest, right? I don't have
sure.
to react to it. So if I'm not
Yes,
around people who are also reacting and freaking out, if
right.
they can hold space to be like, what's going on with you? What do we need to take off your plate?
You're a detective now.
Yeah, I'm like an investigator. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this thought has come up. What has been going on to bring this about, as opposed
Great.
to, oh my gosh, I need to do this. I need to
Mhm.
leave the world.
Yeah,
So, and that's just how they manifest for me because of they're attached to my trauma. So when
right.
something traumatic happens to me, they think my thoughts think it's a protective mechanism. So that's really complex for people to understand, but it's like, we have to take you out of here to protect you. So
Yes,
once with a therapist, we unpacked that that's how they show up. She's just like, cool, what are we trying to protect you from? And what else can we do instead of that thing that you don't actually want to do?
right.
Yeah.
Cognitive behavioral therapy,
Woo, yes.
right?
CBT all day.
Okay.
That's my jam.
How this show is called Get the Funk Out, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, because my friend and I was in a massive funk. How did you start to see that you were pulling yourself out of that funk? Like, did you start to build in things like physical activity or new routines that were lifting you?
Yeah, you know what? It started small. It was like, okay, I'll get like a plant and I'll take care of it, or I'll do like a really light job, or I'll have little milestones. Like for me, it was really like, how do I start being honest? Because I was so used to pretending to be everything's perfect and I'll take care of you. That was my like default. And the more that I was honest, I was like, oh, I let myself feel bad, which I kept trying to avoid feeling bad, which made me feel worse, which is so confusing. But I let myself feel the feelings and
Okay.
they passed as opposed to trying to like control everything.
Yes.
Um, and then I really connected with people. I connected with peers who had been through similar things, who had maybe been further along on their journey, who would tell me things that were helpful for them. Working out was really helpful for me. Like I liked weightlifting. I liked to like
Yeah.
hold something strong. That felt really good. And I really liked coloring and poetry and writing.
Great.
Writing really helped me, which I mean definitely led me to like create a book at some point. But I think the writing, because I was always a writer, and that's
Yes.
I was telling other people's story. I wasn't telling mine. So I started
Yeah.
figuring out like I need to tell my own story and then
Yes.
change the story because my story was very the way I was thinking about myself was so negative, was so narrow, was so like I'm this broken person. And I was like, that's not true.
Mhm.
I've survived so much. And maybe these skills, maybe pretending I'm okay, doesn't actually work for me. So let's try something else on.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
um and and that and music, oh my gosh, like in the film, I'm definitely singing, and I love singing. And so that's connecting to like karaoke situations. That's a place of healing. Even if all my songs are like dark and emo, they have
That's
a
all right.
like they're getting out. I needed a release.
Exactly.
I needed a release.
I love
So
that.
those are some of the things. But I gotta tell you, I live in California, and when I'm in a funk, I go to the redwoods. I mean, there's just something just so spiritual and kind and peaceful about those trees, and I slow down. And I
Nice.
slow down a bit. Yeah. And
I
just
gotta
breath.
go there. I haven't been there yet.
Oh my gosh, you have to
And
go
I'm
there.
in California, so yeah.
All right, you've got to. Janine. You have to.
You're in Northern California, correct?
Yeah, I'm in Oakland, so there's
I'll have to
redwoods
come up there.
everywhere. I'll show you some great redwood groves.
I would love that. Oh my gosh. Where can people find your book and more information about you?
Yeah, so people can go on KelechiUbozoh.com. They can get the book there. I also do sign copies. And also it's always available on Amazon. And you know what's so funny? They're teaching it at Boston University and part of their curriculum.
I went there. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Are you talking about with the person that runs the program, the new program, correct?
It's a trauma-informed
Okay.
therapy group. Yeah, not therapy, but like it's like for public health, actually. Yeah, which was just so funny because I was like, I couldn't even get into Boston University. And so
You are now.
I am now, right? Just
I
really
mean,
good.
you're in the minds of the students now. How's that?
Yeah, it's amazing. And I get to talk to the students sometimes, and they're just I just have so much hope because people are just doing things differently than what we've been taught. We're being more open, we're being more real.
Yeah.
So anyways, long tangent to say you can get the book on the website. You can also find the S word, like links to the film on my website as well. And yeah, and I mean, I do a lot of speaking events. I'm not on social media a bunch for, besides LinkedIn, but if you ever want to connect with me on LinkedIn, there's always that. It's kind of where I leave things because social media is not always super helpful for me. So,
well, it is very time consuming. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it is. And I need to sleep and color in between all of the deep conversations or healing spaces or coaching or, just things that I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that's important. One last thing. I remember my dad passed away and my stepmom, she's just been through a really tough time. So I sent her coloring books, but I sent her expletive coloring books.
Yes, I have that one.
I don't know if she realized it was for the right household because she was like, what is this? I thought it was funny.
I think it's amazing. I love that coloring book, but if I'm at the airport, I have to be super careful. I'm like, are there kids around as I'm coloring this thing?
Hi, can I have a page to your coloring book?
I'm like, no. It's deeply cathartic. Sometimes it's just nice to like create and put your hands on something. Coloring is very grounding for me. Like whatever regulates you.
I agree. Yeah. Definitely. Well, I have loved this. That's an understatement.
Oh,
it's so great.
It's been great talking to you. And I'm excited about how you've transformed your experience of pain into something that people can connect with to a larger healing network. Like that's all we're looking for is connectivity. That's what keeps us safe. That's what helps our mental health.
You're right.
Yeah, holding that space for folks. That's really important work. So I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.